Hi, y'all. It's Terry. I'm coming at you from a recording because I seem to have not put together how you go live and how you stream other people's feeds. So I'm putting it together. But this is just an FYI about the Murdaugh case. I've been following this Murdaugh case for a couple of years. And the one that's on trial now, Alec Murdaugh, it's either Murdaugh or Murdaugh. He pronounces it Murdaugh. But he's on trial now for the murder of his son and his wife on June 7th, 2021. Pretty brutal murders. It's hard to believe. I think it's probably hard for the jury to believe that a guy could do this to his child and to his wife, but that's the trial. And it turns out in opening statements, we heard from the state that they have forensic evidence, electronic evidence, that's going to put the defendant, Alec Murdaugh, in the place where the murders happened. So they've got a phone, they've got a car GPS thing that he's got one of the newer Suburbans that has all that information in it. And anyway, they put him there. And then they showed one of his statements. This is into the evidence, but in the opening statement, they said they were going to show some statements made by the defendant. And one of the first statements he gave was in a patrol car. And he was talking about finding the bodies of his wife and child. And it's pretty gruesome. The murders were done, one with a rifle, two different kinds of ammunition, and one with a shotgun, two different kinds of ammunition, and one with a rifle. The wife with the rifle, the son with the shotgun, up close and personal. There was stippling, so the guns were not far from the victims. And you can just imagine, there was an injury to the son's head. There was an injury to his shoulder and side, but the head was traumatic. They get more graphic in the case, but there's no need to do that. But what's interesting is that it came out in evidence after the opening statement. The prosecutor said, we're going to show you that he said he tried to help him. This scene would be very, very bloody. I don't know if any of you have any kids that have gotten a cut on their head or whatnot, but even just a cut on your head bleeds a ton. This guy had his head was shot by a shotgun up close and personal in his head, such that he didn't really have one anymore. I mean, it was going to be a really, really bloody scene. So the defendant, Mr. Murdaugh, said, well, even seeing what I saw, and what he saw had to have been horrific, but he said, even seeing that, I went to check, tried to roll him over, and then I stopped and tried to do something with his phone. Nobody knows what he was trying to do with his phone. But he said, but then I stopped and realized it was futile, and then went to his wife, who was also badly, badly injured, mortally so, or fatally so. And she had a lot of head injury too. She was shot in the head with a rifle. So there were two long guns used in these murders, shotgun and a rifle, and the damage was incalculable. So he ran over to her, and he said he tried to feel for her pulse and la da 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 da. When the cops got there, they discovered that both victims were on their stomach, were lying face down about 30 yards apart, and the blood spatter and blood and all the things were everywhere around them. They were found in pools of blood. Alec had on a white t-shirt, or he said he did, when he found them, and when he tried to pick them up or roll them over or check for their pulse, he had on a white t-shirt, he said. There was no blood on him. In fact, when he's in the patrol car after the sheriff's office and the SLED agents, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, get there, they're interviewing him in the car, and he's saying all this stuff, and he is pristine. He looks like he's got on a freshly laundered shirt, and there's absolutely no way. I mean, my child cut her head once when she was little, and there was blood everywhere. I mean, and I held her, and I had blood all over me, and it was a minor thing. Well, it took some stitches, but otherwise minor. There's no way you could have gotten anywhere near them and not just be covered in blood. And his t-shirt was white, and his shorts were khaki. There's absolutely no way he wouldn't have had blood, in my opinion. And it's just my opinion. In my estimation, there's no way he could have come away from that scene without having just a ton of blood on him. The prosecutor in their opening said that they could link the defendant to where the murders happened, even though it was on a 1,700 acre farm, their second residence or hunting residence or whatever. They could link him to be there. Then they said that the shell casings found at the shooting range that's on the property and just where they used to practice shooting, the ejected cartridges had been rifled through the same weapon as had the ejected cartridges found at the murder scene. So they found casings and cartridges, and they match, like they've been cycled through the same gun. So that's kind of damning. His alibi doesn't really hold up, and I think they've got some witnesses for that. But I think it's a tough leap to make that a man would kill his son and his wife over financial woes. And that's what they're going to argue, that the son had been in a boat accident in 2019, which had resulted in the death of a young woman. And so he was being sued civilly for that because the son was a minor at the time. And was driving under the influence or boating under the influence, or is alleged to have been. He will never be prosecuted for that crime because he's been killed. The prosecution put on a really good, or said they were fixing to put on a really good case, and started off with a bang. They started off with the first responders and what they saw. And then with the first recorded speech we saw, a recorded statement we saw made by the defendant himself, which was damning and strange. And there were no tears, or I mean, maybe he was in shock. I don't know. It was, I don't like when people say, oh, he didn't act right when he lost his people. He didn't look right, I have to tell you that. He didn't have any blood on him. But the statement in the car, I think, is pretty damning too. He cries, but there's no tears, or he's sort of crying, or I'm not sure what he's doing. And then he describes what he saw with his son, which is just awful. And if y'all want to go into more detail or get more detail, I suggest watching Emily D. Baker. She streams this trial, and she is the best legal commentator, I think, out there. She gives all the details, and of course they gave the details in the court. The defense lawyer got up for his opening statement and said how terrible the injuries to the son and the mother were, and just, it was shocking how graphic he was in terms of how violent the deaths were. And And then he said that he was going to show, or that their evidence was going to show, although the defense does not have to show anything, they don't have to prove anything, they never have to prove anything. Right now, Alex Murdaugh is considered to be innocent until the state meets its burden beyond a reasonable doubt. That's just how it works. But the state went a long way to doing that so far with the evidence that they have, which is just right now, just evidence of the murders and the injuries and the cops' investigation. And they've started to talk about some cell phone stuff and the statements. They've got four statements from him that's probably going to trip him up. But anyway, the defense came on and said, how could any father do this to their son and beloved wife, and there were no problems, and there was no this and no that, which is bound to be fallacy. Nothing's perfect. I mean, there's no perfect. He was saying the relationship was perfect and everything was perfect and yada yada yada, and they had all this fun time that same night, the night of the killing. So I don't know what's happening, but anyway, the defense came out strong and said they were going to defend Alec and did not believe, or Alex, everybody pronounces his name differently, and said they were not going to, they believed the evidence was going to show that there was nothing amiss and that somebody else could have done this, or it wasn't Alec. I thought the prosecution made a good case. Made a good opening statement case, about what they were going to show. They're going to have to bring in the boat crash, the civil litigation, which of course implicated Alec Murdaugh because he was the father and the owner of the boat. I think they settled those cases. And also, it turned out Alec had been stealing from clients and from his own law firm for quite some time, maybe a decade. And that had just come up. His law partners had just confronted him prior to his, the killing of his family. And also there had been a death in 2015 of someone who was connected to the Murdaughs somehow, purportedly to Buster Murdaugh, who is the surviving son, the only surviving member besides Alec of the nuclear family of the Murdaughs. And then in 2018, just prior to the boating accident, their house manager, sort of nanny type person, who was working for them and was like a member of the family, tripped over a dog, fell, and died. That story never really made sense. And then her sons sued the Murdaughs, and Alex stole their settlement, $5 million. So, there's that. Meanwhile, the state's going to need to bring up some of this problems because there's over 100 charges against Murdaugh for financial crimes, like fraud and theft and all of that. And they think that that was the impetus or the motive for taking out his wife and son. I don't know if it was to get money. It all seems so crazy. But also they've thrown in, or the defense has thrown in, that Mr. Murdaugh had quite the opioid problem, and he went into treatment for that. But I don't know how you spend millions of dollars. I mean, I guess it's possible to spend millions of dollars on opioids, but I don't know how you do that. So I think the state has a hurdle to jump with the motive in this case, but in criminal cases, you do not have to prove motive juries want a motive, but you don't have to prove that. And so far, the state is proving up a lot of evidence that this guy did this crime. So I'll be doing little short videos like this, trying to summarize what's been done so far. But so far, I say state 1, defense 0, but that's how it's supposed to be. Defense hasn't put on a case. Doesn't have to put on a case in the law, but I'm sure they will. But I'll come back on Monday and update you more on the case, and hopefully I can give you some more details about the other crimes, or we can find out what else comes in. I'm just stunned right now that what the evidence that the state has shown so far. And the biggest evidence to me so far was in his statement, was the state showing the statement of Alec Murdaugh in the patrol car right outside, right by the crime scene. And he's saying, I tried to roll him over. I tried to check for pulses. And he's in a pristine white t-shirt. He himself does not look pristine. He looks like he's sweating. I'm sure it was hot. It was June in the low country. But, wow. I mean, I think showing that was really positive for the state. State 1, defense 0. But defense hasn't started their case yet. All we've had is the state. And we're going to have even more interesting witnesses coming up next week. And since I'm not streaming the case, I suggest you go to Emily D. Baker and watch it if you want to watch the trial in total. And I'll just be giving summaries of the evidence, and my opinion, my analysis of the evidence at the end of each sort of block of time. So come on back and we'll talk about this some more. I don't know if those other crimes mentioned are going to come in, but they might, because after the murders, just one more thing, after the murders, the defendant said he hired somebody to kill him so his surviving son could get a $10 million insurance policy, except the guy that he says he hired says he didn't hire him, and he wasn't really shot. Although he said he was shot in the head, he wasn't really shot, and there didn't seem to be any wounds indicating a shot. So I don't know why he would have done that. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot going on. But if you think about it, from a legal standpoint, that's kind of a guilty mind kind of a thing to do. Like running. You know, you're going to try to knock yourself off because you have all that guilt about what you did. That's evidence, and that'll come in. So I appreciate y'all and hope you tune in soon for an update. Thank you.